If you find the content Unfound provides informative, please support this podcast at Patreon, PayPal, or YouTube. Jesse Lee Farber was a 29-year-old from Tamaqua, Pennsylvania. He was the father of two and was a creative type. On the night of August 11th, 2015, Jesse called his girlfriend, telling her he was on a nearby mountain, that coyotes were after him, and to bring guns. The girlfriend and her brother showed up just minutes later, but could not find Jesse. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. As a person who covers and analyzes disappearances as a job, you all probably realize by this point that I have to be a bit more black and white, honest, and cynical than all of you. No different than when an accountant says you can't deduct for tax purposes all that money you spend on your dog when you think you can. For me, that sometimes means I have to be truthful when I say that the missing people were lying near the times of their disappearances, even though many of you might not be so hardcore. This is a lot different, of course, than not believing suspects. Some unfound examples. Tyler North. Yes, he told his sister he was going home, but we now know that was a lie. Allie Lowitzer. My opinion is that she surely was not going to pick up her check that day. Evelyn Piper. She was surely not going to Israel to get married. Well, with Jesse Farber, you're going to once again be asked to analyze what a missing person said, both in part and in whole. How do we go about determining the truth of famous last words? And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Linez's website, charleyproject.org. Jesse Farber, in contrast to the circumstances of his disappearance, was a pretty low-drama guy. He didn't have many run-ins with the law. Jesse was exclusive with the same woman for many years, right up to the day of his disappearance. He was a dad who was always there for his kids. And despite Tamaqua being far from everywhere, Jesse and his girlfriend had plans to get out to see the rest of the world and what it had to offer. However, in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Jesse started losing money somehow, and he missed the 2 days of work before his disappearance. So, on August 11th, 2015, the second day in which Jesse missed work, that afternoon, a friend of his saw Jesse walking from his grandparents' house into Tamaqua, although they did not acknowledge each other. The belief is that Jesse was going to meet someone who owed him money. However, that night, Jesse called his girlfriend Rachel, saying that he was on Sharp Mountain on the outskirts of town, that coyotes were after him, and for her to bring guns. Immediately, Rachel and her brother drove to where Jesse said he was. However, the two found no signs of Jesse. He was never seen again. Searches of the area eventually yielded a pair of boots and a bag. But to this day, there is a disagreement as to whether the items are Jesse's or not. I realize that none of you will really believe that coyotes were after Jesse. However, does this then undermine the additional information that Jesse was where he said he was? Contemplate how much of his phone call can be believed as you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, Jesse really wasn't paying his younger brother back for beer and cigarettes, was he? Number 2, why would Jesse accept a more prominent position at his job, then turn around and not show up a couple weeks later? And number 3, Jesse's family says the bag that was found was his. His girlfriend disagrees. Who do you believe? The people who love Jesse the most are split on their beliefs as to what happened to him. The guest for this episode is Jesse's girlfriend, Rachel Carroll. Unfound News. Dr. Telesco and I had a great but sad time talking about the murder of Tyler North this past Thursday, September 14th. If you missed it, please find her show on the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice channel on YouTube. And dang it, please subscribe. Next, this coming Wednesday morning, I'll be appearing on the campus of Florida Southern College in Lakeland, Florida, to speak to students about disappearances. It's been a while. I hope I haven't lost my shtick. Finally, Steve Pankey wrote me another letter. If you'd like to hear what he said, please subscribe to the Unfound Live Podcast, which is available on the app you're using right now. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the girlfriend of Jesse Farber, Rachel Carroll. Rachel, welcome to Unfound.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's start here. Of course, as you've been introduced, Jesse's girlfriend. What can you say? We'll get maybe into a little later of, why I'm talking to you and the work you've personally been doing, why you've devoted, a large portion of your life to finding out what happened to Jesse. But what do you know about Jesse's family? Brothers, sisters, parents, and, maybe, of course, also, how did you and Jesse meet? Let's talk about all that right now. What would you like to say?
About his family, he has 3 half-brothers. He has 1 half-sister. His father was in his life in and out, but he didn't see them all the time. They weren't like in his life on a regular basis.
Okay. Would you say, of course, how did you and Jesse meet? Maybe let's go to that and then we'll go back to that a little bit. How did you two meet?
We met through a mutual friend when we were like teenagers. So I knew Jesse for quite a while before we ever got into a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And was this like love at first sight, or did it take a little time, or what?
It took time. Like I said, we were actually just really good friends. We were really close, and we helped each other like with different things going on in our lives at that time. Like we were so young, we did all kinds of different things that kids do. And then I'd say we were friends for a couple of years, and then we decided to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about maybe early 2000s is when you two first met? Because he was, of course, 29 when he went missing in 2015. So teenagers, early 2000s?
I'd have to think. I think I was 15 when I met Jesse, so that would put it at somewhere in the early 2000s, yeah.
Okay. And is he a little older than you, same age, or what?
Yeah, he's almost 4 years older than me.
Oh, okay. Almost 4 years. So you were 25 when he went missing?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Did you two live near each other or not, or what?
During our, before we were in a relationship?
Sure.
He kind of moved around. I know he moved around a lot as a child, and but when we were teenagers, he was kind of staying at different places all the time. So we in Tamaqua, that's where I lived, and he just kind of went to different houses that he was staying at with friends and everything. So we didn't really have a certain place that he was staying at that time, but we were both in Tamaqua.
Okay, so it wasn't like he's, of course, being 4 years older, you wouldn't really have been going to school, or even if you were going to the same school or something, it was nothing like that, being that, he's 4 years older. Weren't in the same classes together or anything like that. Okay.
No.
All right, and when you two ended up becoming a couple, approximately what year was that?
I would say 2007.
2007, 2008. Okay. And how, during that time, of course, that was like 7, 8 years before he went missing. How well did you get to know his family? Did you go is this something like he introduced you to them, or did you see him at any get togethers? How would you say those years were in regards to
Um,
you and him and his family?
um, Good. I knew his grandparents. They were always wanting to help at our children and stuff like that, and they lived close to us. Um, as for his brothers and sisters, he would see them, I would say, like every couple of months. They were either like in school and they didn't live around here. But we would see them. They would come to the kids' birthday parties, and we'd see them around holidays. I've met his father a few times, and he lived in Andrews, which is a place where Jesse first started living, like when he was really young, when he adored it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I got along really good with his cousin, that was like a brother to him. His mother, Carla. Yeah, I was okay. Sorry.
That's all right. All right, so you got to know of course, together those years, you got to see a lot of people in his family.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and we got along good.
All right,
Yeah.
And you mentioned you have some kids together. Of course, we don't need to get into their names or anything, but how many kids and how old? What years were they born?
We have 2 children together. Our son was born in 2009, and our daughter was born in 2014.
All right, so one well before he went missing, and then the other just a year before he went missing.
Yeah, she was still really young.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of father was Jesse? Of course, you had one child that was like 6 at the time of his disappearance. What can you say about that?
He was a great father. He was nervous, of course, when we found out we were going to have a baby, but he did great. He was the kind of dad that was involved in everything. Like, he helped me give them baths. He got up in the middle of the night when they were newborns, changed diapers. He was very involved in sports that my son attended and different, activities. He was always there for that. He was there for first days of school, staying up late to wrap Christmas presents. Everything you can imagine, he was involved in their lives. He was a great father.
Okay, very good. What would you say about Jesse himself? Maybe some of those qualities that attracted you to him, that you decided to be a couple, to have 2 children together. What are some of those qualities you think about regarding him?
Well, he was the kind of person when we were friends where he could make friends with anybody. He had this sense of humor that was his own. He was very funny. Like I said, he could make friends with just about anybody. He was very smart, and he had this loyalty in our friendship that you don't really see anymore. Like, it doesn't exist in the world anymore. Like I said, I was able to talk to him about things even before our relationship, and same with him, where we helped each other through, just issues of being a teenager, basically. Mm-hmm. And that continued on. And I would say that is probably what I love the most about him, is that, we were always there for each other, and we never had to doubt each other.
Mm-hmm. Very neat. Very neat. You two lived together?
Yes.
You did? Okay. Like most of the time that you were a couple? We'll get into like near the, toward the near, we're going to get into like the time, like right before he went missing. But back then, 2008, 9, 10, 11, living together?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what was Jesse into? What was, outside, of course, being with you, being a father, what were some of his interests?
He's always been an outdoor kind of person. Anything that had to do with the outdoors, which we both were, was both our main thing that we love to do, spend time outside. He loved to camping, hiking, going 4-wheeling, fishing, hunting, or if we just went out to have a fire. anything outdoors. He loved to cook. That was one of his things he loved to do.
Huh.
He was really creative as well. Before he went missing, he was doing a project for the company Event Help, where he designed something and sent it into them, and that they were in the process of like creating it and all that stuff. So he was very creative. He did a lot of different things. So he was great.
Okay. And I know that you two, this may, is become an issue a little later, but you two actually, I don't know if you worked together, but you worked at the same place together. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. He started a few months before he went missing. I actually got him a job there.
Okay.
At Ryby's Dairy.
Okay. And what kind of other jobs did he have while you two were together?
Before the Liveys, he worked at a few places that were kind of like factory type places. When he was younger than that, though, he did a lot of like construction jobs. He knew how to do all that kind of stuff, roofs, anything installing stuff. He could do masonry work. So he was good with all that stuff also.
Okay. Very good. All right, so you have two children together, 2009 to 2014, living together, kind of working together, at least at the same place. And maybe we should go back to that. So you worked at the same place, but different shifts or something, or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I worked like first shift. I had to start at 5 a.m. and then I basically worked. There wasn't like a set time. I just started at the same time every day, but we would work until it was finished for the day. And his job came in after that. It was basically like a second shift, but basically he started when we finished. Like where I worked, we'd make the ice cream and then it would go into the freezer, and it was his job to palletize it and organize it all after it was made that day.
Working with ice cream, that sounds like the kind of job I would like, Rachel.
It was fun.
Except that these days in my 50s, I'm becoming lactose intolerant, so maybe not. That wouldn't be as good. Did you make any lactose-free ice cream there, Rachel?
Oh yeah,
you did.
Yep. You wouldn't believe the different stuff. We actually made cat ice cream one time in there.
Cat?
Yes, cat ice cream.
Oh
ice
my
cream
goodness.
for a cat.
Oh, that is spectacular. All right, well maybe I would have. Maybe I would have made it there then. Lactose intolerance ice cream. That'd be spectacular. Okay. So, all right. So all this is going on. And, overall, of course, you had two children with them, 5 years, together that whole time? Or, if I may ask, any, like, breakups, get back togethers, or what?
Yeah, there was here and there was, like, little disputes. It was never anything major where he might go. I know he was staying at his grandparents in town the one time, and I honestly can't even remember what was wrong at that, like what the argument was about or whatever. But it didn't last very long. That's usually how it went. If we ever had any issues, we got over it pretty quickly. But for the most part, we lived together, even when we didn't have our own apartment yet. When I just had my son, we both lived together at my mother's house, and until we were able to get on our feet and get our own place. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say most of the time we always had our own place, or we were staying at my mother's.
Okay, and maybe I should ask that. What did your family think about Jesse?
My family adores him as well. They consider him family, and he would call, my siblings, his siblings, and my siblings were extremely close to him because they were younger than me, and so they kind of, they looked up to him too as a brother, and they're always with me in the searches. My family always shows up, so it's affected everybody in my family.
Okay.
They all grew to know him because he was living with us,
Okay, so there's nobody kind of saying, well, Jesse's not good for you, anything like that. They thought very highly of Jesse.
Yeah, they all love him.
Okay. Let's move on to some of these issues that are going to, I think, play a role here when it comes to talking about his disappearance. First, His mental health. Of course, you knew him probably better than anyone. Living with him, having 2 children with him, knowing him better than his own family, his own parents, because you were around him quite a bit. And I think
Right.
that would be the way for any couple of any type. What can you say about his mental health? Maybe going back to the 2000s up until 2015. Did he have a lot of mental health issues, depression? What can you say about that?
I would say no. I never seen any signs of like any kind of mental health issues. I mean, he had anything that any normal person would, like if we were struggling with a bill or something like that, but he didn't have any kind of serious mental health issues or depression or anything like that.
No kind of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or even just, run of the mill, dare I say, depression, long term, anything like that.
Not that I seen.
Not you ever saw. For example, did he ever hallucinate or anything like that? Ever paranoid? Once again, we'll talk about the actual day of the disappearance. But going back to like around when you had your first child, that time, anything?
No, nothing like that. No.
Nothing at all. Okay.
No.
Moving on, we got to talk about it. I don't know how much we need to talk about it, but what about addictions? What do you know? Once again, the woman in his life. What can you say about that?
Well, before we were in a relationship, we both would do, normal teenage stuff, drinking, even he smoked weed. But there was never an addiction issue. There was never he never showed any signs of anything like that. The only thing that ever was weird was when money started disappearing. But even when that was going on, he didn't show any signs of being on any kinds of drugs whatsoever. Like the way he was every day was not. He wasn't showing any signs of being on any kind of speed or the opposite, like pills where he would sleep all the time or anything like that.
You never, once again, you're living together, you have 2 children together all those years, you never found anything like that. Just put it out there. Heroin, meth, cocaine, anything in his clothes, hidden anywhere, anything. Any place that you 2 ever lived together, ever.
No, because I would definitely bring that up to him if I thought that, or if I suspected anything, I would definitely have brought that up.
Okay. Anything that might maybe kind of go under the radar, like, of course, we know many people these days don't even have to do illegal drugs to become addicted, like overdoing prescription drugs like opioids. You ever see anything like that?
No, I did not.
No, zero.
No.
Okay, very good. Moving on, you've already kind of brought this up. We have to talk about it, and I think it's important to put this in the time frame of his disappearance, but you've already mentioned this thing about money. When did this, maybe we need to first understand what was, being that you 2 were a couple, you have children together, so hopefully people both paying for things that the kids need. What was usually the way you and he handled the money situation, the money you earned, the money he earned, and how it went toward the things you need to buy for your children or otherwise? How did you usually handle that?
Well, we didn't, I know a lot of couples try to split it 50-50, but we were actually really good with, paying stuff, and we weren't like, okay, well, you owe this half, I'm not paying this half. It was never like that with us. We were really good at working together with that. Like, for example, if I got paid one week more than he would have got, I would have covered, what we would have needed, food or anything, and vice versa. He would do the same thing if it was better on his end that week.
Mm-hmm. Would you say then that it was pretty smooth? Those years pretty smooth? You were kind of had a system with all of this?
Yeah, I would say so.
You had expectations, from week to week about how much he would be making, how much you would be making, and where the money needed to go, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. When did it start, though, the way you remember it, that things maybe seem to not go the way they've been going? What is your first memory of that? Maybe you can explain that to the audience.
I would say that it started happening in 2000, excuse me, late 2013, where there would be like hunks of money missing, whether it would be, $200 here and there. And I did ask him about that, and he would say that, either I lost it. It was a lot of times that he lost it. I don't know what happened to it. One time he said that he lost his wallet, which had his entire paycheck in it. So it was a couple hundred, like it was a lot more than just 200. And for a while I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't want to accuse him that anything, because nothing, excuse me, seemingly was going on otherwise. Mm-hmm. It didn't seem like there was anything I should be worried about, so I did give him the benefit of the doubt. But as time went on, it just kept happening. So I would start to say, like, what's going on? And we would, talk about it or whatever, but I never would get a straight answer from him about where this money was actually going.
Okay, so the way you remember it, and we realize we're going back over 8 years, you're thinking this started kind of like a year and a half before he went missing. Of course, he went missing in August of 2015, but you're going back to like December of 2013.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Can you think back of anything going on at that time? Did he change jobs? Was there something else that was going on with him? Now that you look back, maybe you ignored at the time, that you look back now and say, maybe it could have been that. Anything that pops out now in retrospect?
He was switching jobs. I remember he started a job at this place called Elk Lighting, and I knew a lot of people there that, well, after the fact that he went missing, and told me some weird stuff was going on there. I'm not sure exactly what, but I often wondered, was there something going on there with him that he didn't tell me about? Did that have something to do with it? Someone maybe at his job? I still never was able to pinpoint who or exactly what he was doing with this money, but that's something I considered.
Okay. When you say weird, I don't know how much we want to get into that deeply, but when you say weird, what do you mean? Just give an example, please.
I heard that somebody was working up there that was kind of tricking people into taking their money. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's one thing I heard. I'm not sure if it was like a gambling thing or if it had to do with drugs, or I'm not sure what it even had to do with, but that was one thing that I heard.
Okay. When we were talking about money, we're not here to get into how much people money make or anything, but would you say from just like a monthly basis, how much money would you say was missing on a monthly basis, as best you can tell, starting in 2014? How much money per month?
I'd have to think about this a second. I would say it didn't happen as often as like every paycheck. So I would say, and it was always different amounts. So like I said, like one month it would be just $200, but then another month it was his entire paycheck. So I mean, all in all, I basically looked at the number that it built up to, which ended up being like definitely well over $1,000, if not $2,000, just in that small amount of time.
Wow. Okay. And at that time, how much were you two were living together at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much time would he have had? Once again, if we're to think that, was it a gambling issue? Was it a drug issue? But you were seeing him quite a bit though, right?
Yeah, that's the part that doesn't make sense either, because there was never nothing that kind of would make me think, oh, well, he went off and did this. He said he was going to do that. He never did that kind of stuff, and we even worked together at the same place. So I can't remember one time that he said, I'm going to go hang out with my friends and disappeared for a couple hours or anything that would give me an idea that he was up to something. There was never like a situation with that. Like he worked, I worked, and we were with the kids and took care of our kids. That's what makes this whole situation so weird.
Okay. I guess what we're also saying is, it's being that he had so much going on, it wasn't like this, dare I say, It wasn't like this money was going to another woman, for example. There's just no time.
Right.
Okay. So when you would bring him up with them, he came up with all these excuses, wallet missing, etc. Was this a situation where you're actually getting paychecks, or was there like direct deposit? Did you two have a bank together? What did you do with your money?
Well, in the beginning, when this first started happening, at the other company, I know he was getting like written paid or, just a normal paycheck that he'd have to go get cashed. When he started working at Libby's, we both got direct deposit. He had his own account. I had my own account.
Okay. And during that time, if I can ask, did he ever get on, everybody can do their banking online these days, even back then, did he ever show you the account to show you that the money was actually getting deposited, or were you just taking his word?
I'm pretty sure that, because we still got pay stubs and that, so when we would work together to pay our bills, we would both know how much we both made for that particular week and, what we had to pay. Like, we would, work that all out, so I would know what he got paid, but I wouldn't know, what he might have taken out of his account. But when you look at all that together and you're trying to pay bills and you figure that in there, it comes up when there's money missing,
Okay. So is it your impression, given that this last job had direct deposit, so he's getting direct deposit, then he was then taking money out of there somehow and not telling you about it? Is that the way you look at it now?
Yeah, he would have had to have been doing that, yeah. Okay. And like I said, when he was just getting regular paychecks, I guess whatever was happening to his money then, it was gone before I ever knew, before he even brought it home, basically.
Okay. If I can ask, and we'll probably get into this a little later anyway, is this still a mystery here? We're doing this interview on August 26th of 2023. Is this still a bit of a mystery to you?
As for the money aspect?
Yeah, yes.
Somewhat. Towards the end before he went missing, in the beginning, he would always say random things, I lost my wallet, that kind of thing. But towards the end, he started saying that he owed his brother this money. And I didn't really believe that. His brother even came to talk to me about that. And his brother told me, yeah, Jesse does owe me money. And I said, well, what could he owe all this money to you for? And he said that it was basically years buildup of him lending him money. And I said, well, for what? And he said, just normal things like beer and cigarettes. And I said, so he owes you all this money and over $1,000 for beer and cigarettes? How would he rack up a bill like that? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he said, yeah, well, that's what it is. And I didn't believe it, but that's what they both told me. So I'm not sure if that's actually true, but that's what they said, and that was what they had told me before he went missing. Okay,
and we have to remember, you're the one who's living with Jesse, so you would be seeing how much, did you realize, if that's what the brother's going to say, did you realize that he was drinking and smoking that much to have to owe somebody else money for that? Is that you were around him more than anybody else? Does that seem believable to you, given that you were around him more than anybody?
No, because the brother was implying that this was before, like how I said, Jesse didn't drink or do any of that stuff while we were in a relationship. Mm-hmm. So he was implying that this was all from when Jesse was younger, too. So that even narrows down even further the time span that he would have needed all this money for beer and cigarettes and just normal living supplies, I guess you could say, maybe clothes or whatever. It was stupid stuff that he mentioned that really didn't add up to this money being missing.
All right, so once again, the way you remember it, was this conversation happened after Jesse went missing?
No, this was not long before he went missing.
Oh, not long before he went missing. And so he told you that this was for this stuff. So in 2015, Jesse's paying him back for cigarettes that were smoked and beer that was drank from 2005.
That's basically what they told me. Yeah.
Okay, and this is a younger brother. You don't have to mention his name, but this was a younger brother of Jesse's.
Yes.
And how long had you known this brother?
I met him when me and Jesse were still friends, so I met him before our relationship. He was pretty young then.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say what was that?
I guess where I'm going with this is, so you knew this guy for like 10 years, and that only never came up about Jesse giving him money until 2015.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right, listeners will try to decipher all of that. But like you said, this amounted eventually to like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
All right, but once again, you never saw any evidence was going toward gambling or drugs or anything like that. Once again, the way you remember it.
Right. Nothing that I could figure out that it would have been going to at all.
All right,
no signs of nothing.
All right, it wasn't like he was going out and spending money like on a new watch or whatever else. That you might nothing. Okay.
No.
It doesn't look like his I guess what you would call standard of living. He's saying he's losing his money, but it seemed like the standard of living, whatever he was wearing and doing, all the same.
Right. Yeah, he wasn't one of those people that, was big on, I'm going to go shopping and buy myself all this stuff or anything. Like, he would buy himself stuff, but he wouldn't excessively spend money either. Okay. So I knew that wasn't the issue either.
Okay. Let's talk about 2015. Did this money issue cause a strain on your relationship?
It would when it would come up, but I had a hard time, like I said, even though I felt like there was something not right, I didn't want to necessarily throw accusations at him when I didn't have any proof of anything going on. I did bring it up when it would happen. But otherwise, everything else was really well in our relationship and in our lives.
Okay. I'm going to maybe go on the money thing for one more moment. Could this have been a situation where really he wasn't missing money? Could it have been a situation where you had an impression that he was working a lot more than he was? So you thought he was working enough to make, let's just pick out a number, $1,000 over 2 weeks. But really, he was only working enough to make $500 a week. Is that possible?
I would have to say no, because like I said, when we would work together to pay our bills, it was like apparent what we both made. So we both knew what each other's paychecks were. Okay.
All right. So during the course of 2015, other than that, I guess, what was your impression of how things were going for Jesse in 2015 and the things going on between you two? How were you feeling about all that?
Everything was going really well. He finally got his identification problem sorted out after many years of struggling with that. When he was a child, his last name was changed pretty often, and so when he became an adult, he had a problem getting a simple ID, which was hard for him to apply for jobs. He couldn't get his license. So in 2015, he finally was able, he got that sorted out, and he finally got his name back to Jesse Farber in April of 2015. Prior, he was Jesse Rex for the whole entire time I knew him. So then after he got that situated, he was able to get his license, which he was thrilled about that, because for so long, he didn't have one. He just got a raise at the job we were working at and a promotion. And like I said, he designed something for that company, Invent Help. And he had already went and met them and talked to them about this product he was designing, and he already put money into that. Another thing was that we were both looking into college. We wanted to, better ourselves. We didn't want to work at like this factory all our life. We were both looking into different things to do in college. He wanted to go for mechanics, and I wanted to go into like the X-ray ultrasound field. So everything was going good, and we had planned to get out of the Tamaqua area eventually when we had the money to do so. He had dreams of building a house for us all from
Mm-hmm.
scratch. But everything was really well. He was very happy at that point. So there was anything else off the wall. There was nothing else going on that was odd to me.
Okay. And so your relationship was good, even going up to July and August of 2015.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. And you two were living together with your children
Yes.
in Tamaqua?
Yes.
Okay. And do both your families live in that area as well? Very close?
My family does, and his grandparents live right outside Tamaqua.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of his family members, they kind of were scattered in different places. And he didn't see them as often, but we've seen his grandparents all the time.
Okay. During the course 2015, anybody who you friends with, somebody maybe who knew maybe Jesse better than the person who knew you, ever come to you and say, I'm a little, you're of course seeing Jesse as being fine, except for this money issue that seems to be still unresolved. Other than that, anybody ever come to you and say, I'm a little concerned about Jesse because of this or because of that? Anything like that?
No, nothing like that. Even at work, people were actually thrilled with him, bringing him on. The job that he had wasn't easy, and so a lot of times people would walk out of that job, and Jesse loved it. And when he got the promotion, he was able to be more in control of it, and everybody there was fascinated that he was keeping up with this job because it was such a pain for everybody, basically. So even at work, there wasn't no complaints,
Okay. Anything else that you can think of? Anything, once again, maybe at the time it seemed like nothing, but now, of course, 8 years later, during 2015, anything that pops up to you, once again, in the money that's still a mystery, we'll come back to it, but anything other than that, really caught your attention about Jesse?
No, not before his disappearance. There was nothing.
Okay. Did he ever tell you maybe somebody was after him? Anything like that?
Not at all, no.
No, zero. Okay. So what do you remember about those days leading up? Let's just maybe, of course we know this is 8 years ago, but August 8th, August 9th, August 10th, in those days leading up to that, anything, what can you say about those days? You two living together, how much did you see him? What can you say?
Well, he started staying at his grandparents on August 1st, which is when we had the argument about the money. And that came about because his brother came over and told me what I've already told you about him loaning money about beer and all that. And I obviously didn't believe that. And so I said that to Jesse, and I said, why can't you, just tell me the truth? What's happening that you can't tell me? And he would not say anything. He wouldn't say there was anything other than what they had both said. So we were both angry. He went and stayed at his grams. And then shortly after he started staying there, his attitude totally changed. We would see each other pretty often. We still did stuff together. He still came to the apartment. We talked every day. We texted all day long. I mean, everything was pretty normal aside from the way he was acting. He was acting in a way that I never really seen him act before. I could tell something was wrong, but he just refused to tell me what was going on. He seemed exhausted, and he seemed like there was something always on his mind. He was quiet, depressed even, nervous, and he just was not himself.
And how was he doing at work? I mean, were you still seeing him at work?
Yeah, I would see him at work when he would come in, and some days, I would see him too when I would drop the kids off before I went to work with him and pick them up, but I would see him at work too. And he just seemed quiet and very in his head, if that's the right word. Just not himself, like something was on his mind.
Okay. When his brother came over to talk about that money, was that something that you requested, or did his brother just show up to see you one day?
I know that me and his brother talked about this whole thing twice, and once it happened a few months earlier. And I think the first time I asked him to come over and talk to me about it, but I think the very last time Jesse asked him to come over and talk with me about it.
Okay. So, once again, he just showed up at your place. I mean, did he say, hey, I want to come over and talk to you? I mean, was that the only reason you saw his brother, or was there another reason?
For that day, the last time that I spoke to him about that was the reason that he came over, yeah.
And did you say anything like, well, we have 2 kids together, and do you think that maybe you could put off him paying you back? 1-year-olds can be expensive. Is there any way you could just forget this for a while? Did you ever make that request to his brother when you spoke to him?
Yeah, I tried to talk to him about it. I wasn't screaming at him or anything. I just wanted to figure out what was going on and why it was such a big secret. I said, I did explain that to him. I said, we have these bills. We have 2 kids together, and we have plans of doing, other things, moving on with our lives in different areas. And, I don't understand. I basically was like, I don't understand. You're saying he owes all this money for these things that can't possibly add up to that amount. I said, if there's something going on, I said, I'll help him pay, but I'm not going to do it when I don't even understand what's going on. So I was just trying to basically figure it out. And what was frustrating about it is that it was such a big secret.
Okay.
And they just kept with the story of it being for beer and stuff like that.
Did you ever talk to anybody else in Jesse's family about any of this before he went missing?
I think I probably brought it up to his aunt.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't. She also thought it was odd, but she didn't really have an answer to it either.
Mm-hmm. And what about his grandparents? He went over to stay with them. Did you ever speak to them about it?
No, I never brought it up to them.
Mm-hmm. What about Jesse's parents, maybe his mother or somebody?
No, I never talked to his mother, and he didn't really talk to her either. And the father, we seen him every once in like a blue moon. We would go visit him or whatever, but I never talked to them about that.
Okay. All right, so something happened right around the beginning of August to the point that he actually moved, went to live with his grandmother. That's how, with his grandparents, that was how bad the argument was?
Basically, I wouldn't say it was really bad. We just weren't getting along about it because, I explained that, we couldn't come to an agreement. He just wouldn't let me know what was happening.
Okay.
So he's like, I'm going to go over, and stay over here for now. And like I said, we went on as usual, doing normal things right afterwards.
Okay. And that was the way it stayed until he went missing. He never spent the night at your place, the 2 place you shared, ever again?
No, he never spent the night, but we spent, days together and stuff like that, doing normal things, taking my son to soccer, anything. He would come over to the apartment to watch the kids so I could get in the shower. He came over because he needed clothes, and I washed all his clothes for him. Everything was basically like I would always been, except for that he was staying at his grand's.
Okay. And would you say most of his clothes and things were left at your place? Or, when he did that, how much did he take with him?
When he first left, he didn't take much. So I would say, I don't know exactly what day that he told me he needed his clothes, but I washed everything for him and folded it up, and then I took him back out to his grand's house. So then that would have been there at his grand's.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If he doesn't go missing, what do you think would have happened in your relationship?
I wanted him to come back home. I was really worried about him. I knew something was going on. I didn't think that it was anything to this extent at all. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was something to do with that money, and that he just was embarrassed, or he didn't want to admit that whatever was really going on with the money, or I just think he needed time to that's what I was thinking was happening. He needed time to process it or, whatever. But our relationship was still very close. And, we talked as soon as we woke up in the morning, text me, good night, I love you. How are the kids today? Everything was still the same.
Mm-hmm. What did you two have any, mutual couples that you'd maybe go out together with? Any friends like that?
Not like that. We would spend time with, if say we were going to go out and do something, it would usually be, go four-wheeling, and we would go with the same people we always did, like my little brother and friends that we grew up with. It was usually like that same crowd.
Did you ever talk to any of them about this money situation?
No, I didn't.
No. And none of them ever, I guess, voluntarily came to you?
No.
All right, none of them seemingly had anything to say about Jesse allegedly giving this money to his brother for beer and cigarettes from 10 years before that?
No, and I don't think that they weren't aware of anything like that going on either.
All right, so you never brought that up either? Like, talking to some of your female friends who knew Jesse, did you ever bring it up to any of them, and could they offer any insight?
No, like I said, I think the only person that I really asked about, like advice-wise, would probably have been his aunt. Mm-hmm. And she thought it was weird also, but we both didn't really know what to think what was happening.
Okay, when you say his aunt, who is this? His mother's sister or his father's sister?
His mother's sister.
Mother's sister. Okay. Let's move up to August 11th, which is the accepted disappearance date for Jesse. What do you remember about the timeline for that day? And first of all, what day of the week is it?
August 11th was on a Tuesday.
All right. Where was Jesse supposed to be that day? What was he supposed to be doing? Please.
On a normal day, and for this time, I would say that, I would take the kids to his grand's house in the mornings, and I dropped them off with either his grandmother or with him, and I'd head to work for 5, and then I would work all day, and he would either, have the kids, and then when it was his time to come in, either I picked the kids up from him when I was done, or I met him at work if he had to come in before I was done. And I would pick them up with it from his grandmother, and that was basically a normal day. He would go to work, and then he would be done anywhere around, 10, 11 p.m.
Okay, and is that what happened that day?
No.
All right, what instead happened that day?
As for the 11th, he was already in Tamaqua. He asked his grandfather to take him to Tamaqua on the 10th. And he ended up staying over someone's house from the 10th to the 11th. And from what they had told me, he was there in the morning, and that he left, I think, somewhere around 11:30. He told them that he was planning to go to work that day, and that he was trying to meet this guy whose girlfriend ripped him off the day before. And this guy had told Jesse that he would return the money and that they would meet. This guy kept changing his location, and Jesse was getting frustrated with that, and I think they changed the location about 3 times. And then this guy had said that during the last time that Jesse never showed up. And police actually said that they looked at camera footage to see if Jesse showed up to this meeting, and they said that he didn't. So from that point until there was a sighting of him around 7 o'clock, I'm not sure where he was or what he was doing in between that time. Mm-hmm. But about 7:15 p.m., a childhood friend of his seen him walking on the S-curves. And he was walking from the valley, which would have been out in the valleys where his grandmother lived, and even a little further out from that is where Libby's was. So he was walking from the valley on the S-curves heading toward Tamaqua.
Heading like into town?
Yes.
All right. And everybody should know I am going to do a map video for this because we are going to get into some locations I think will help everybody understand this. So this is kind of, as I would say, south of town. He is walking from kind of the outskirts of town. He's walking north into Tamaqua. And once again, we have this story about money, right? And we're going to get into this a little later. So we have this money that's been disappearing since like the year before. And now on the day of his disappearance, also, once again, another talk about money.
Yeah.
And him being ripped off. And we're going to get more into that a little later. On this Tuesday, was Jesse supposed to work?
Yes, he was, but he did not ever show up.
Okay, do you know if he ever called in to say he wasn't going to be there? You, of course, were there, right? You were at work.
Yes, on Tuesday I was at work, and then, I went to work on Tuesday. Later in the day, though, people were messaging me from work saying, Jesse still hasn't come. Do you know where he is? Is he going to show up? Blah, blah, blah. And at that point, Jesse wasn't returning any of my calls or answering any texts or anything. And I just said, I know he was supposed to, and it's unusual for him not to come to work, but I'm not sure what's happening.
All right,
so why he's not coming.
All right, so he just got this promotion. Everybody's really respecting him from the job that he's doing. Then all of a sudden on this Tuesday, he does what we call no call, no show.
Right.
All right.
He also did that the day before.
He did it the day before on Monday as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and what was his usual work schedule? What days did he usually have off during the week? Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah.
All right, so Fridays he's at work. Saturday and Sunday, of course, days off. And then on Monday, he doesn't show up for work.
Right.
And do you know where he was during that day?
Yeah. He was at his grams, and he had our son that day while I worked. And we were talking throughout the day, and the original plan was I was going to wait at work for him, and he was going to come to work, and we were going to see each other before he had to start. And I waited for him for a while, and he just didn't show up. So I went to pick up my son then, and I talked to his grandparents, and his grandfather told me that that Jesse had planned on going to work all day, just like he told me, and that literally when they were going to leave, Jesse just decided, I'm not going to work, take me into town. And his grandfather said that he dropped him off at the Burger King in Tamaqua. From there, he met up with this girl. I'm not sure what time, but I know he met up with this girl, and she supposedly stole $80 from Jesse. So then he met up with some other people, and they ended up going to the guy's house where he stayed for the night. And they all said that he was okay. They said he was happy and everything was okay. They did mention that they were doing drugs that night. This is all there. This,
by the way, we should say you didn't find all this out until after he went missing.
Yes.
All right. So we're just taking these people's words on all this. No proof of any of this.
Right.
All right, and also just to put an exclamation point on it, his grandfather wasn't bothered that Jesse wasn't going to work that day. Instead, he just wanted to be taken to Burger King.
He said that he did think it was weird, and he didn't understand why, but he didn't really question it.
Okay. All right, and so he doesn't show up for work Monday. How did you get your child back from Jesse?
He was still at his grandmother's house, so I went and picked him up. Then once Jesse didn't show up to work, I left work and went to his grams and picked up my son. All
right, so also Jesse didn't go to work. He just left the child you share together at the grandparents, and he went off on his own, even though technically it's his responsibility.
Right.
Okay, and so then on Tuesday, he also doesn't show up for work. And this is the accepted disappearance day, and we've kind of gone, he's supposed to meet this person who ripped him off, and we have the story about how the person keeps moving, and we'll get more into that in a bit. So you're trying to call him that Tuesday. Is it going right to voicemail? Does it sound like, is the phone ringing at all? What can you say?
Yeah, it was ringing and stuff like that. I called I called him like all day long. I was texting him and everything because, like I said, I didn't hear from him since the 10th. I didn't know. Then I had on my mind that, I know he was in this way where something was bothering him, and then I have people from work calling me, and they're complaining to me, and I'm like, I can't get a hold of them. I'm trying to get a hold of them, but yeah, the phone would ring just about every time I would call it. Okay. But he would never answer. He wouldn't answer text, nothing.
Okay. And finally, though, you're calling him, texting him, and he's not responding. Then all of a sudden on this Tuesday night, August 11th, you get a call from him, correct?
Yes.
All right. What time was it? And please detail that talk.
Okay. So he called me at 8:43 p.m. and he was really upset. The first thing he said to me was, "Bring guns." He said, "I'm in a tree. There are 10 to 11 coyotes after me, and my phone is going to die." And I asked him, "Well, where are you?" And he said, "The high school mountain." And then he said, no, the elementary school mountain. And then he said, no, the high school mountain. So he kept going back and forth. And I said, well, which one? And he said, the high school mountain. And he said, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And then I said, well, where exactly are you? And that's basically when the phone hung up. I tried to call him back immediately. Within seconds, I called him back, and it just went right to voicemail.
Didn't ring at all.
No. So, as if he would have dropped the phone or disconnected it, just hung up on me, it would have still rang. So it must have either died or literally, broke.
Okay. So we have to kind of define a couple things. So there's the high school mountain, and there's the what? The other mountain? What's the other mountain?
The elementary school mountain. Those were named.
Please.
Yeah, those are. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Please explain what's the difference between both of them.
They were names that, me and my friends, including Jesse, called these mountains. The high school mountain's technical name is Sharp Mountain. But we called the mountains what they were, behind the school. The mountain in the high school, it started right behind the high school. So it would go up behind the high school, and then it would go on for a couple miles. And the same thing with the elementary school. And then there's another mountain in Tamaqua that we call the Coal Mountain. So these names are just what we called them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so he says he's at one mountain, and this actually do have names, right? It's Sharp Mountain, right? It's
Sharp, yes. Yep,
okay,
Sharp.
These were just, I guess what I'm saying, the names you gave were kind of just local stuff, local names.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So he says that he's at one place, then he changes his mind and says he's at another place, then he says, no, wait, I'm actually at the high school mountain behind the high school.
Right.
All right, and now once again, in the map, I'll be able to show everybody. This is kind of on the west side of town. I guess the high school is a little bit on the outskirts of Tamaqua. So he says these coyotes are after him. He's in a tree. Bring guns. The phone goes dead. You try calling him back. It goes right to voicemail. What do you do?
I immediately, first I tried to call him back. I tried calling him back about 3 times. There was no answer. So I immediately just went out in my truck. I got a hold of my brother, and we were up on that mountain within a few minutes. Because where my apartment is, it's not far from where the bottom of this mountain is. So we immediately went up and started looking for him.
Okay, and this mountain is this like a hiking area, where you go to park and there's already trails, or how would you explain it to people who haven't been there?
People do go walking up there, but mostly people go up there to ride 4-wheelers or trucks. People go up there to have fires and different things, and there's usually pretty many people when you do go up there. But it is also a really harsh terrain up there. There's a lot of, it used to be coal mines, so there's a lot of stripping pits up there. There's lots of loose gravel that you slide off of. There's stripping pits that are really deep that are just filled with water. There's holes that, I later found out after Jesse went missing that these holes I didn't even know exist that are called air shafts, and they're literally just straight up and down holes that are hundreds and hundreds of feet deep. It was, I seen and they're pretty scary to see.
All right, so you're up there. Of course, it's dark by this time. So maybe
Yeah.
9:30 that night. It's dark. Of course, you have the lights of your vehicle. You get up there. It sounds like a pretty expansive area. You're just kind of like yelling out his name and everything, right?
Yeah, we drove around in the truck, but we would go a little distance. We would honk the horn, flash the lights, yell out the window. Then we would turn the truck off. We would listen for a response. We'd get out of the truck, search the area like on foot, and we kept doing that as we would go through like the mountain. Now, there's definitely areas that weren't obviously covered, but I mean, we covered as much as we could in that time, and we went from not just directly behind the high school, but all the way to, it runs about 4 miles. So we went, quite far all over the area that we could.
Okay, and how long did you stay out there before you, to use, for lack of a better term, gave up?
It was about 2.5 hours, and then I called the police, and the police came to my apartment. They met me there, and I explained the situation to them, and they immediately put him as a missing person.
Okay. I have to ask, were you thinking, of course, now he didn't show up for work and all these things. Were you thinking maybe this was some sort of prank? Or what was going through your mind at the time? Of course, he's talking about being in a tree, 10, 11 coyotes, bring guns. I think most people would think that this is some sort of prank or something. What were you thinking?
I think normally if somebody would call and say that, I probably would have thought that way. But what got me was, like I said, he was scared. And as the call went on, the more and more upset he became, until he was crying and yelling into the phone, and and that's what got me. And I was just asked recently, like, well, why would you think it was safe to go up there on your own? And honestly, none of that ever even crossed my mind. The only thing that I was scared really about was how scared he was, and I didn't really think of anything other than I have to find him. And I literally just thought that it was going to be, I'm going to go up there and pick him up and bring him home.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was ever going to be anything more than that.
And you didn't go up there alone. You went with your brother, correct?
Yes, I took my brother, yeah.
And what was he saying about all this? You're up there, you're looking for him. If you can say, what was your brother's impression of all this?
We were both scared because Jesse was so scared. But we both thought it was just going to be something that, we just got, he got freaked out or, something, and we'd pick him up and bring him home and everything was going to be fine. I mean, we were scared, but we didn't think it was anything like this. Like, we didn't think anything like this.
When you went up there, did you see any cars coming back down from that area? Any other behavior that caught your attention when you went up there?
Nope, I didn't see anyone or anything. And usually when you go up, you do see people coming and going. But on that night there, I didn't see anything.
All right. Of course, it would be so dark. If there was some light off in the distance, you surely would have seen it.
Right.
Okay. All right, so you get back, police come and take the report, and what kind of goes on for the next few days? What goes on? Are you thinking you're going to hear from him again? Do you talk to his family about this the next day? What goes on in those next few days?
Yeah, I talked to his family. Actually, when I was on the mountain that night, I called his grandmother and I called his brother, but they just thought that they didn't really take it seriously. They just thought that he was off partying and up to no good, and so they just thought he was causing a problem that wasn't necessary. I mean, they took it differently once he was missing, but at that point they didn't come to help the search that night or anything like that. The first official search for Jesse was on August 13th, where there was a few different search teams that came. There was dog teams, drones. There was a military helicopter. The state police provided a helicopter. Volunteers, quads, people driving vehicles. And they searched for a few days, and it was called off. I think it was the 18th that they called it off because the family said that he'd been seen in the area. So that's when they called off the searches.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. Let me kind of maybe just take a little interlude for a moment before we get deeper into some of these things, especially considering, this missing money and he got ripped off and everything. We're going to get into that a little deeper. Why you, Rachel? When did you decide that you were going to be the point person for Jesse's disappearance? Of course, you were the girlfriend. But, I will tell you, it doesn't seem like Jesse's family does much media, so why you?
I guess it's because I contact and I reach out to anybody and everyone who's willing to listen. I reach out to missing groups, anybody that will listen or share like his flyer and a summary of his story. If they're willing to put it out there for me, then that's great. I reach out to podcasts like you and just to get awareness spread and hopefully to push his case further. Anything or anyone that's willing to help, I'm always open to trying anything.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if basically I'm the one that reaches out to people. I'm not sure why the family, they don't do that. I know his mother did do one podcast, and then I know she did another podcast, which was deleted in less than 24 hours. And other than that, I'm not sure what they have done themselves.
You're talking about this mysterious Pennsylvania podcast, correct?
Yeah, that one I told you about. Yeah.
Right. And I listened to it. Yes, parts of it anyway. All right, so that's why, and you've been working on this since Jesse went missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let's now get into some of these things. Maybe you can talk about the interactions you had. Once, of course, his family figured out that he was off just partying or something else. Talk about some of those conversations maybe that you had with his grandparents, if you had any in those, let's just say those 5 to 7 days after, or any other of his family members, if they could give any insight into any of this.
Well, his brothers did show up to the searches, but they didn't really. I know the one brother, the one that he supposedly owed the money to, he was on the mountain searching the first 2 days, I think. And then he said that he got heat exhaustion, and then he didn't come back. The youngest brother was too upset. He didn't come. Jesse's mother came, but she stayed down at the bottom of the mountain, like where basically like the camp was, like where everybody would meet up and everything. She stayed there. She didn't actually go up into the mountain. As for like their opinions on what happened, I'm not really sure what they had thought at that time. I do know that the first day, the August 13th, when they called the search off for the day and it was getting dark, and I walked off the mountain, and his mother jumped out of a truck at me and started accusing me of murdering Jesse in front of the police and in front of a crowd of people.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
I have to ask, I'll just ask this right now. Have the police ever questioned you and Jesse's disappearance, kind of like, let's just call it a little more of an interrogation? Have they ever done that?
Do the basics, like just like anybody would, like asking me questions about, do you know what he was involved in? Do you know, is this normal activity for him? What was going on in his life? Is there any reason that he would take off? All like the normal stuff, but not that early. Like they didn't do it that day that I was talking about.
Right, but at some point, did they talk to you? I just guess let's just keep it simple. Did they ever ask you, where were you that night? Things like that. Can anybody prove where you were? Some, stuff like that.
I don't think they did ever ask me that. They did receive like the phone records and stuff like that, so they were able to see that like I was trying to get a hold of him, and I reported him missing right after I quit. Like I wasn't able to locate him, and they came to the house and stuff. So they never really like looked into extreme detail or anything.
Okay, so I guess what we're also saying is, despite his mother pointing the finger at you in front of all these people and everything, I guess her words didn't really carry that far.
Not that day. It was pretty upsetting for me.
Of course. But I guess what I'm saying is she's very suspicious of you. Maybe she's still suspicious of you to this day, but it didn't seem to hold a lot of weight with the police.
No, the police officer there just, he was kind of like, everybody needs to calm down, emotions are running high, that kind of thing.
Okay, and at no point after that, 2015, 2016, 18, 20, have the police ever, when you've talked to them, said, well, Jesse's family kind of suspects that you had something to do with his disappearance, anything like that?
No, not the police. They never said anything like that. I mean, his family has.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, let's move on to this. When did you find out about something you've already talked about, but I just want to put this in the timeline now. When did you find out about this story about the day before, how the reason he didn't show up for work is because he went to go get this money and then he got ripped off? When did you find out about this story?
I only heard part. Well, what I was told was somebody that me and Jesse both know. After he was reported missing, this woman called me and said, "Yeah, I seen him sitting on this porch on Bow Street in Tamaqua," and I didn't have any idea whose house this was or anything. But then later on, I came to find out that I guess Jesse gave this girl the money. He was waiting on the porch, and then she took off through the back and kind of left him there and burned him for that money. And I'm not sure when I found out that much detail, because she actually told me herself that she did that.
Do you mean the woman who ripped Jesse off actually admitted to it?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I seen her a few times, and I confronted her, and I kept saying, like, just tell me the truth. I'm just looking for him. And her and her boyfriend were like willing to say, like, look, yeah, we talked to him. We were supposed to meet him, and yeah, she did rip him off, but we don't know what happened after that. And that's what they told me. That's what they told me. Like, they were willing to talk.
All right, and how soon after his disappearance did you talk to them about this?
I would say no more than a month. As soon as I started to figure out the other side of this, but like I said, it's hard to think back to exact time, but it wasn't long after his disappearance.
Did you know these two people before you heard about this?
No, I didn't know about a lot of them, actually.
All right, how do you think Jesse knew them?
That's a good question. I don't know.
All right.
I don't know how he met this girl to begin with. I don't know.
All right, so they didn't work together, didn't go to school together, didn't live in like the same complex that you two lived in, nothing like that?
No, nothing like that.
And what exactly, I mean, if they're going to admit to it, what was the scam?
She told me that he asked her to get drugs for him. And that she was a drug user at the time, and she basically ripped them off so that, she could have that money to get whatever she wanted.
And she said she was going to go inside that house to get drugs. She went out the back door and ripped them off.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Well, I guess certainly underhanded, certainly a little illegal, but I give them all the credit in the world for owning up to it, if we are to believe this story, of course.
Right.
Do these two people seem like the type that would do that?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, right now, they've, from what I've seen, changed their lives around. Great for them, but at the time, they were, up to a lot of different things.
Okay. Up to no good, maybe ripping other people off. Yeah. Did she ever say that she had ever taken money off of Jesse before?
No.
All right, so because once again we have to go back. Well, all this money's missing. Where did it go? And now,
Right.
and now we have this story like the day before that he goes missing that somebody took $80 from him.
Right.
And what?
And that.
Please.
And then that he was looking for these drugs that, like I said, he's never been an addict, or even at times had fallen into like choosing to do a serious drug. Yeah. So I'm not sure what happened on this day where he just decided, I'm going to go out and do this. And it's so out of character for him. It's just, I don't...
And what kind of drugs are we talking about?
Meth.
Okay. All right, so they ripped him off. And then it was that next day, allegedly, that he was trying to get that money back. And was this the same guy that would not meet him, kept changing the location, and all the same people?
Right.
Okay.
He told Jesse he would pay him back, and Jesse had told the guy's girlfriend that he was staying with that he did feel uneasy about meeting him, but that they had planned to go, and there was like 3 different places, and I know from the Facebook messages that Jesse was kind of getting annoyed that he would tell him to go there, and then he was blowing him off, and then as far as, like I said before, they were supposed to meet, and even the police looked at cameras, and Jesse never showed up. So I don't know if he just gave up on that situation or...
Okay. Why do I think they weren't going to pay this money back at all? I mean, what people rip people off and then the next day give the money back?
Yeah, especially the kind of people they were. That's something somebody brought up to me too. That's not normal.
Of course, it's not normal. When you were talking, they were giving an opinion on what happened to Jesse. Did they know about his disappearance?
No, they said they just told me what happened. They all they ever really did say is like, we don't know. Like the boyfriend said like he didn't ever actually meet him that day, so he couldn't tell me. What was where was he headed, or what was his mind like, at that time, nothing like that. So they just kept saying, we don't know, we're sorry for what you're going through, but we have no idea. And I went to them many, many times because I kept getting directed back at them. Like no matter where, I would get directed back at them. So I would always, I kept going back to them like, okay, are you telling me the truth or are you lying? And they always said the same thing.
Okay. Are they also saying that they never did give Jesse any drugs at all? Is that also true?
Yeah, I believe. As for if there was any time that happened that I don't know about, I'm not sure, but I don't think so. But yeah, like they never gave him anything back in return.
So they say. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we got this crazy, and once again, we have to remember this happened the day before on August 10th. She takes the money, takes off. Jesse seemingly, allegedly trying to track them down even into August 11th, but seemingly that never happens. I want to go over this again. There was a sighting of him on August 11th, kind of what they call the S-curves, walking toward town. What time was this again? Who saw this?
This was about 7:15 p.m., and it was a childhood friend of Jesse's that have known him for most of their lives. So he was somebody that I considered, a trustworthy person. I believed what he told me.
Okay. Of course, and how long after the disappearance did this person come forward?
He came right away, and I talked to him personally. He said that he even reached out to Jesse's mom to let her know too. So he told us right away.
Okay, so it wasn't like a year later he was trying to remember it.
No.
Okay, and did he honk at him? Did they wave? What did he say Jesse looked like? Anything like that?
He just said he was walking on like the outing of the road there, like in the gravel right next to the guardrail. He said that Jesse was heading in the direction of town, that he was carrying a book bag. He didn't say that he stopped. He said he wished he would have stopped, but he didn't stop. And I don't think that Jesse looked at him as he was driving past to have recognized that it was his friend. and he was kind of looking forward from what he told me.
Okay. So this could conceivably be Jesse walking from his grandparents' place into town? Would this have been the right direction?
Right, that's a question too, because it seems like it would have been that he was coming from the valley, but this happened on the 11th, and from what his grandparents told me, they haven't seen him since he left
on the 10th.
The previous day, yeah. So they had never said otherwise that he was at their house. So it's really confusing of like where he was, what direction he was going in, and he's walking on the road, and then he decides to walk back on the mountain. It just nothing makes sense.
Okay. This sighting of Jesse, is this close to where he said he was on that phone call?
Actually, like right on the other side of the S curves is where the mountain starts. You typically can't like get onto it at that point because it's really steep right there, but it is not far. Yeah, you can get onto it.
Okay.
Pretty quick.
All right, so not a crazy sighting, and it very well may be in this call that Jesse was telling the truth, even though the coyotes and maybe sounds a little outlandish. Let's now move on to this. Very fortunate, I guess, in this disappearance that you have been able to get a hold of those phone records for Jesse. First of all, tell the listeners how you got them, and what do those records say about the evening and night of August 11th of 2015?
I got the records from his brother because me and Jesse's phone were under his contract. So his brother printed out records for me, and he gave some to the police. He's the one that told me who the person was, like a certain person was, which happened to be the guy that Jesse stayed with at his house overnight. Most of the calls on the 11th were to this guy and from this guy, and then there was calls to his bank account, a few of them, a few calls to his voicemail, and a few more calls to that same guy, and then the last one was to me.
All right, so as far as the records go, last call he ever made, seemingly, is to you.
Yes.
Does it seem that if we are to believe that he actually was on this mountain and having some type of issue, does it look like he texted or called anybody else trying to get help before he called you?
No, not that I had seen, no.
No. Those records, as best as you can tell, when was before he called you that night about the coyotes, what was the last substantial phone conversation he had that lasted for any like a minute or two or three? How long before that?
As for talking to somebody, or because I think the calls he made before me were calls to his voicemail and the ones to his bank account, but he did call that guy twice, and it said it was an outgoing call that Jesse made to him, but he didn't answer it. So, but they had talked earlier in the day where you could see like Jesse called him, he called back, that kind of thing. But there was a little bit of time in between where there was calls to, the voicemail, whatever, until he called me. Like there wasn't anything like right before that. I think there was like 2 hours where there wasn't anything before to call for help.
Wow. All right. So 2 hours, let's say, of silence. Then all of a sudden he's calling you about being up on the mountain near the high school and bring guns and the coyotes.
Yes.
Okay. Regarding his call to his bank over and over, is that something that was common for him to do, or would you say that's a surprise to you, being that you lived with him for so long?
I think it's strange because this happened on a Tuesday and we didn't get paid. We got paid bi-weekly on a Friday. So for him to keep calling, I mean, if he would have called once, he'd know that his account, what was in his account, which at the time was nothing. But for him to keep recalling it was weird to me. It was like he was waiting for money to be put into it, or he was trying to make someone else believe that he was waiting for money to be deposited. I mean, I can't really think of any other reason that he would repeatedly call it, knowing that it's not just going to change.
Right. All right, so he's doing this somewhere, and he's trying to reach this guy. Do you have the records for any text? Do you have the record for the? Of course, we're not going to know what the texts say, but do you have any texting information?
There was texts that I had sent to him. I know that there was some texts that were. I don't know really how to explain it, but there's these apps out that, basically it's like a free texting app. So when somebody actually texts you from the app, it comes up as like an internet usage instead of like as an actual text message.
Yeah.
There was those on there, and they were supposedly from this girl that ripped his money off, and from the boyfriend. Although they did also exchange messages over Facebook Messenger. But I can't remember. I think that there was some text as far as messaging that guy. He stayed at his house too, as well. But I don't remember like the time frame of the text messages.
Okay. Let's move on to this phone ping. Where, as best you can tell, has anybody ever told you where his phone last pinged?
Yeah, the police told me that the last call pinged off of the tower that is on the high school mountain, and it pinged off the elementary school mountain tower. So it hit off both of them, and they told me that from that, he could have been in anywhere in a 2-mile radius when he made that call, which is a lot of area.
Right.
It's a lot of area.
All right, so it does say that he could be on Sharp Mountain by the high school, but it says that he could actually been in this other location that he made a mistake on as well.
Yeah, okay. and surrounding towns even. I mean, like a 2-mile radius adds up to a lot of area.
Okay. Regarding his phone, just the phone itself, did you tell me that he had gotten a new one recently before he went missing? And was it found? Was it not found?
Yeah, he got a new phone. I'm not sure the date, but it was, right around when he left our apartment, and as far as I know, it was never found.
Okay. Why did he get a new phone?
I think he wanted to get like an updated one. He had more of like an old school one, and he actually got this like one of the newer models that came out recently.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it wasn't like he lost this other one or something like that?
No.
Okay. Did he kept the same phone number?
No, he got a new phone number.
He did get a new phone number. Okay. I see. And is there any chance, I have to ask, is there any chance that he might have had more than one phone going at a time?
That's something that I've considered. I tried looking into it as best as I could, but I could never prove it. But that is something that I've wondered about and I've considered.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking also is the phone that he had, or phone number that he had up until like August 1st of 2015, how long had he had that number?
That I'm not sure of. He kind of went through phones pretty quick, so I'm not really sure how long he had that particular phone or the number that went to it. Not offhand, I don't remember.
Okay. Because I guess for most people, I've had, a bunch of different phones since 2003 when I got my first cell phone, but I've had the same number the whole time. So, are you leading us all to believe that he was switching phones, and when he would switch phones, the numbers would get changed too?
I don't think it always went that way, but sometimes it did go that way.
Okay. All right. So maybe change carriers or something. Okay.
Yeah.
And anything about those records? You got them from his brother. Would you say that the brother gave them to you willingly?
Yeah.
All right. Anything unusual about the records or anything that would cause you to think they weren't true?
Yeah. I was with his brother when he gave the police the records. And so the police were actually looking at the records that his brother had given them, and it wasn't long after that, and they actually called me down to the police station, and they had said to me, they were like implying that I wasn't telling them something, and then they finally came out and said, like, you're lying about the time that he called you, and I'm like, no, I'm not. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, well, just wait a minute, and they actually got AT&T to forward them the records right away. And they came back in, and they're like, okay, well, we got the records straightened out. We see that you weren't lying, and they let me leave. And then they pulled his brother in. But before they let me leave, they were asking me, you know, if Jesse needed somebody, would he call his brother? I said yes. And were they close? And I said, yeah, pretty close, you know. Then they pulled his brother in. I'm not sure what was said to him, but the police had said that there was a phone call Jesse made to his brother, and that phone call was not on the records that he had given me or that he had given the police. And that's what kind of messed up, like, the records altogether.
And when was that call?
It was at 6 p.m., I think, the night that Jesse went missing. And it was like a 4-minute long call. I'm not sure if it was the 10th or the 11th, but I believe it was the 11th. Mm-hmm. And, so the police brought him in about that, and I'm not sure whatever came to that or exactly why that call was.
The records that you have, is that call on there?
No. Well, I did have another copy that the police got me, and then I handed them copies into another police department that asked me for them that were supposed to return them, so I don't have that copy right now.
Right. It's amazing. They asked for your good thing, and then they don't give it back as if it's the police's phone records. It's not. They have a right, I guess, if they want to solve something, they have a right down, but they should let you keep a copy. You know, we run into this. But I guess what we're saying is that the records that you have, that you've seen, you didn't see that particular phone call on there. However, when the police went directly to the company, the phone call was on there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we might imply that at some point, somehow, somebody deleted that call from the records?
Right.
Have you ever talked to his brother about that? Any explanation?
No, he never really told me anything about that. That was kind of toward the end of when he was heading out. He stayed for about 2 weeks when Jesse first went missing, and then he said that he needed to go back. He was in college, and that was it. And I didn't see him again then for a while after. I didn't see him again till later on that year before Christmas.
Did you ever ask him, though, about that phone call?
Yeah, I believe I did, but I don't think he ever he kind of just denied that.
Oh, he did?
He denied that happened, yeah.
Okay. Is this the same brother that came over to you and told you about owing money?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. Stuff was found up there on Sharp Mountain. Why don't you talk about this? A couple searches done and things were found. When did this all happen and what was found?
Okay, so in 2016, December 2016, a hunter came across a pair of sweatpants that were laying at the base of a tree, and he supposedly went to pick them up. And there was a rock in one end. And he said he looked up and seen the tree, or the bag that was hanging on the tree. So he knew of Jesse's situation, and he knew the grandparents. So he contacted Jesse's grandparents. From there, from what I was told, they took the bag they removed the bag from there, and they took the bag to the police. And the police had said that they didn't need it, and they said that his mother could hold on to it. The kind of things that were found there was the book bag. It was in the tree. Their hoodie, a pair of boots, the sweatpants, a phone charger wire, and there was a credit card found, but that was not found on the same day. That was found later on.
Did the credit card have a name on it?
It didn't, but they ran it, and it did come back as Jesse's. It was a prepaid. It was like a prepaid. It was through his bank. It was like a prepaid credit card, basically, where it was meant to build up your credit, to help build your credit up.
All right, so this happens in 2016, and you were told by the police or whoever that this card was actually Jesse's.
Yeah, I was told it was. Yeah. Well, his family had said that it was his.
Okay. Would you say this was in the general area of where he said he was that night?
I would say it's the general area, but there was a lot of area up there.
Okay. Regarding the sweatpants and these boots, have you ever seen them in person?
No.
Have you ever seen pictures of them?
No, I wasn't allowed to see anything, but I had recently seen some photos of the bag, or supposedly the bag, and the boots. Somebody had brought to my attention these photos that the family put out.
Mm-hmm.
And they had said that they talked to his mother, and his mother said that, yes, that those were the items that were found in the tree that day. And I asked this lady, well, could you send me a confirmation of that? Because I wanted to know for sure that these were the items, because I had never seen them before.
Mm-hmm.
So she would not send me the screenshot to confirm it, but instead what happened was Jesse's mother sent me a message, this was yesterday, shooting off and all kinds of stuff, but in that message she did say that this bag was identified by multiple family members, that it was that bag. So finally, after 7 years, I was able to see these pictures that they posted, and like I said, this is my opinion. I'm going to say not so much my opinion. This is what I 100% believe that is not Jesse's bag. I've been waiting to see photos to determine that, and now I feel like I know that's not his bag.
Okay.
I don't feel like he was ever up there.
Okay, well, we won't get into whether he was up there or not. But regarding how about the boots? Do those boots look like ones that you ever saw when you two lived together? Did they look like ones that Jesse had?
No.
And the bag that is in there, you're also saying, once again, being that you lived with Jesse for many years, you never saw him with that kind of bag before?
The bag was similar to that, but it's not the same bag.
All right, well, we'd like to show a picture of that, so please explain the bag the way you remember the bag that Jesse had and the one that's in the picture. What are the differences?
I'd rather not put that information out yet. I don't want to screw up if there's more of an investigation into that. I don't want to put the information that would change that.
Okay. Please describe
that's okay with you.
Okay, please describe the bag, being that there may be people that might not see the pictures. What is the picture? What is the picture of the bag that is public? What does it look like?
It's a camouflage book bag. It's like a military style book bag. And it has like a digital camouflage print on it. And like I said, it's just like one of them ones that have like a ton of zippers and pockets that are like military style. Okay.
And you're saying that the one that Jesse had was not like that?
No.
Okay. And then when she says military, you don't mean like dark green camo. It's like desert camo, like tan color.
By military, I just mean like if you would type in like a military book bag, like the same fashion comes up. Like they have like all these straps that go across your chest, like to help contain the bag. So that's what I mean by military. But as for it wasn't like a dark color. It was a lighter color.
Okay. However, that was not the only bag that was found up there, was there?
No, there was another bag found a year prior on the elementary school mountain.
All right, why don't you talk about that one and who found it?
So in the fall, I would say the fall of 2015, which wasn't long after he went missing, a couple were walking on the mountain across from the high school, and they came across a bag. They said that inside the bag was a wallet that contained Jesse's driver's license and said his name. So they obviously knew the situation, and these people happen to also know my parents. So they came up to my house and talked to my parents about it, and the following day, they were going to go out. We were going to go out to see the bag, and in the meanwhile, when we did go out, these people had said that Jesse's mother had come and already taken the bag. So we were never able to see that one either. I did call the police about that to see if there was anything that they could do, and they said no. And Jesse's mother says that bag is not Jesse's. I'm talking about the first bag. Mm-hmm. That she says it wasn't Jesse's. And then she said that I made the whole story up, and then she said that it's actually her youngest son's book bag. So what is actually the truth about it? I don't know. I was never able to see that one.
How did Jesse's mother even know that those two people found that bag?
The only thing that I can think of is that we were talking to a mutual person, and I had told her, and she ended up telling Jesse's mother. That's the only way that she could have known, because it wasn't something that I was talking to everybody about.
Okay. So am I understand then that these people who knew your parents went up there, found that bag, and just left it there?
No, I believe that they took it to their house. I don't think they left it.
All right, they took it to their house. And then how did they finally cross paths with Jesse's mother?
Like I said, I'm not sure about that. All I know is the only thing that I can think of how his mother found out so quickly was that I had told somebody about it that was actually involved in the case and stuff, and I believe that they informed his mother of exactly what I had told her, and she went out to their house or whatever and talked to them.
How would she know, or any idea how she would even know where these people lived? Did she know them too?
Everybody seems to know like who they are around here. His mom is from this area too. She went to school here, so there's no doubt in my mind that she knows who they are.
Okay. So they find this bag, they bring it home, tell your parents, but then you tell somebody who went and told Jesse's mother, and then she drives over to their house and confronts them, and they give the bag to her.
Right.
And remind everybody what was allegedly inside this bag.
They said his wallet was in there, and that it had Jesse's identification, and that's how they knew that it was his.
But Jesse's mother is saying that this never happened.
Yeah, well, she said it never happened. Then she claimed that it's not Jesse's bag. Then she claimed it was Jesse's youngest brother's bag. So she said a few different things. And as for like the description of this bag, I don't even have like an idea of what this one looked like.
These two people who knew your parents have never described it to you?
No.
Any reason?
I think basically because they were kind of talking to my parents about it. I was going that day to talk to him about it, but then I never even followed up with doing it once I knew the bag was gone. I mean, I talked to one of them later on, a few months later. I met up with her, and she was just adamant saying about the ID. But I do believe I asked her, and I'm not sure what she had said. She was mainly like so focused on saying like, look, his ID was in this bag. His ID was in this bag. And I remember asking her about that even too. So, and like I said, I do plan on following up with them too to see.
Right, it'd be interesting to see
information.
Obviously, you think the ID would sew this all up, but I'm not so sure. And we have to remember this wasn't even in the location where Jesse said he was, correct? This was on a totally different location.
It was found on the elementary school mountain, so it was something he mentioned, but it wasn't the exact spot. He ended up, switching back and forth, so it wasn't the high school mountain. It was the one across.
Okay, boy, that is... Really, I mean, what are the odds? They go out looking for... they go out there. I don't know if they were... Were these people even looking for anything, or were they just going on a walk?
They said that they were just going on a walk. I think that they lived kind of near some of the woods there. Mm-hmm. And so as far as I can recall, that bag wasn't very far up into the woods either. Like, it was basically lower on into the mountains.
Okay. All right, I don't know what to think about that. That just all of it sounds pretty shaky to me. But what are the odds they go out? They don't find Jesse's bag. They find his brother's bag. How many bags are out there around in the mountains around Tamaqua, Pennsylvania? It sounds a little incredible.
Yeah, it is strange, and at the same time, if I would have just been able to see these bags from the get-go, it could have narrowed down a lot of things.
What do the police say about these bags? These bags are not in police possession, or what? Have the police seen them?
The police didn't see the first bag, and I called them, like I told you. I called them, and they said that there was nothing they could do about that. From what I heard happened, the family removed the bag from the tree and took it to the police station, and the police said that, they had no use for it, so the mother held on to it. So I was never kept as evidence or anything. I'm not sure. I don't even think, because I had asked them in years prior if, do you have a picture of these bags or anything, and they said no.
Okay. All right, people, you can try to decipher all of that. That sounds pretty confusing to me, but we're doing the best we can with the information that's given. That's not Rachel's fault that this stuff is confusing. It's just that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense the way people have presented it. Okay, moving on. What about this guy who showed up at your place? We're not going to use any names. Who was this guy, and what did he have to say?
So when Jesse's brother had given me these phone records, he had told me that he knew one of the phone numbers on there, and it was one of the last numbers to talk to Jesse. And in those days, on the 10th and the 11th, and so he told me who it was, and I didn't know who this person was, so a friend of mine took me to where this guy lived. When I went there, his girlfriend said that he wasn't there and that he was in rehab. So I had left there and I headed home, and just as I was pulling in, my friend said, "Well, there he is." He was standing outside of my house, and
he was already there. He was at rehab, but he was already there.
Yep. I mean, okay. I went right from his house to my house, and he was just standing there. And my friend had said something like, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, I heard Jesse was missing, and so I came over to see what was going on. And, like I said, I've never met this guy before in my life. Mm-hmm. So he came over to the car, and we said, "Well, did you talk to him? You see him before he went missing?" And he said no. And so my friend said, "Well, here's the phone records." So he looked at the phone records, and he just didn't say anything. He just kind of stood there. And then after that, he said that, Jesse was supposed to meet Kyle, that whole story with him meeting the boyfriend. He didn't say that Jesse stayed overnight. He didn't say that Jesse called him on the day of the 11th and asked him to come out and help Jesse move a truck or something like that. And he said that he knew he was supposed to go meet this boyfriend whose name was Kyle, and that was the last that he had heard anything. So that's what happened that day, which was really weird.
Had you ever heard of this? Had you ever heard of this guy before that day? Had Jesse ever mentioned it before?
No. And I even looked back in phone records, and I didn't see any record of him before that either.
So, as best as you can tell, Jesse never tried to call this guy until the day of his disappearance.
Well, the day he showed up at his house, that's the day before, and that's where he stayed, and they supposedly were using drugs, and then he left early in the morning, and that's the same guy.
Okay. All right, this guy have a shady reputation?
Yeah.
Does. Okay. Yeah, we can't forget you go looking for him, and she says that he's rehabbing, and then he's already at your place before you get home. That is something.
Yeah, it was odd.
Okay, and you had no idea that Jesse even knew this guy.
No, and I've never met him before either. I wouldn't even have known who he was if my friend hadn't been there.
Okay, and did this guy ever convey to you how he and Jesse even knew each other? Or for how long?
Not necessarily. I ended up finding out that Jesse was really good friends with this girl. And so this was a long time ago, even before me and Jesse were friends. He was friends with this girl, and she had dated this guy for a little bit. So he might have met him, before or anything, but that as for them being friends or anything like that, no, they weren't like longtime friends or childhood friends like everybody puts out there. That wasn't true.
Okay. Would you say that this guy, was he threatening in any way? Of course, it's creepy that he's already waiting for you. Other than that, though, when you talk to him, intimidating, did he give you the creeps? Was he trying to get you to stop from trying to figure out what happened to Jesse? Anything like that?
I wouldn't say he gave me the creeps or anything. He would try to avoid me. Like I said, I went back to his house a few times, and then he was there, and he would answer the door, and he would talk to me and stuff like that. But there's been times where like stories have gotten so mixed up and everything else, and a lot of people point towards the same person, and I mean, like it just got really mixed up.
Okay. All right, moving on. Of course, we've already talked about this missing money. We still don't have it. It still seems outrageous, but here in 2023, it's still the same story. This money, the reason it was disappearing is because the brother actually came over and told you it was for beer and cigarettes.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on, Jesse's Facebook account. Is it your impression that after he went missing that somebody was using his Facebook account?
Yes, that somebody was definitely using his account.
Why do you think that?
Well, almost immediately, a bunch of people sort of contacted me saying, hey, Jesse's active right now online. And there was, so I would look at that, and it wasn't hidden either. It would say he's active. So I would start sending him messages, and I thought, oh my God, this is great. He's out there, But he would read the messages, but there was never a response. So I started thinking that was strange. So I did contact the police because I thought right away that it had to have been the police. And they said no, that it wasn't them because they were still waiting for the warrant to come back from Facebook so that they were allowed to access his account.
Mm-hmm.
So as that went on, his messages kept getting read, and I would send messages because at that point I knew something wasn't right. So I would send messages hoping, like saying something that only me and him would know about. One time I said, meet me here. If you're out there, meet me here. A place that only me and him knew about. And I would actually go there. I didn't wait for him, and he never showed. I would say things to try to get him to react or get something, tell him something. I've said to him, if something's going on, I'll help you. I'm here for you. Just please let me know you're okay. And these all were being read, and knowing Jesse, I think that he would have answered, and he never did. And then after that, things on his page actually started changing. He had pictures on there, and he posted on there in the days prior to his disappearance, and they were deleted. His personal info was changed, and pages that he would like or dislike or whatever, they were all altered. Everything changed. There was even friend requests from Jesse's account to people after his disappearance. And these people would tell me so. So obviously somebody was on his Facebook.
When did you first notice this, and how long did this go on?
It's still going on, and
Wow.
I noticed this almost immediately. I was messaging them on Facebook, but actually it was other people who had seen his active status that had told me, that brought my attention to it. And I'd say that was about, it wasn't long after his disappearance, a few days after it was accessed.
Wow. The way you remember it, in what ways, how would Jesse usually access his Facebook account? Through his phone?
Yeah, he actually created this Facebook when he got the new phone. So, you know, like when you set up an account through your phone, at least back then, you would use your number instead of your email address. And then on like a desktop, you would obviously use like a email address and then access your account. But then if you tried to use the phone number on a desktop, it really wouldn't allow you to do that. Now I know now things are different, and you could access it all different kinds of ways. But as far as I know, he set it up through his actual phone number, and he only accesses Facebook through his cell phone.
All right. So I guess what we're saying is then it very well could be that somebody had that phone and was using his account. Because anybody else, if they wanted to get into his account, didn't have to know his login information, including his password.
Right, which would take time to figure out. You know what I mean? It doesn't. You can't, I mean, I know people do that for a living, but it usually don't happen that fast. And I've been trying to get a direct answer on that. Like, is that absolutely like what could have happened? Does somebody have his phone? And I didn't get a direct answer, but as far as I'm told, that's what seems like what happened, that somebody had his phone to be able to access that.
So you're saying things that have been deleted from it. What is anything that has been added to his account over the last 8 years? You know, any photos or likes or anything like that.
The one thing that really stuck out to me was there was this page, and I can't remember exactly. It was a horror page, and it was something horror, and it was basically like almost like a comic book thing. Mm-hmm. And what freaked me out about it was like these pictures drawn. There was one where this guy was laying on a table and he was being cut apart, and then there was another one where this man was running and he was being chased in like a wooded area. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I had actually brought it out to social media and like, made it known like that this was going on. Like his social media is being accessed. Somebody's putting this on here. And I mean, to me, it's a little ironic for that page with what was on that page and what was going on with Jesse's case. I was like, this feels like somebody's like making a mockery of him, and since then, since I had brought it out, that page has been taken off his page. It's no longer like a like on his page, and when I try to find that exact page, it's completely gone, like it's been deleted. And that's just one thing.
All right, and your impression is this Facebook account manipulation continues to this day in 2023?
Yes.
Now, in the process of us talking about Jesse's disappearance, you have told me that there are other young men missing or have been murdered in the Tamaqua area over the years, going back, to the 1980s. And we'll just keep this real simple. I'm just going to read off these names. James Herrig, Harig, Seth Muskett, Muskett, John Long from 1988, Zach Vidal, Vidal in 2022, and then a couple men who were murdered, Jason Hahn, Hahn, and Corey Samuels, Samuels. To your knowledge, did Jesse know any of these people?
No, I do remember a specific time when Jay Hahn went missing before he was found, and I remember me and Jesse discussing that and just talking about it. I knew Jay from when we were young kids. Jesse knew his brother, but as for knowing him when this happened, no, and we didn't know any of the other people either. Neither did Jesse. Didn't know any of them.
Okay. Any possibility that any of these others, of course, maybe John Long going back to 1988 is a stretch, but the rest of them have any connections, like to the guy who showed up at your house that day or anybody else? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I don't think so. I don't think that there's a connection with anything like that, but there is a connection as for the mountain. I mean, James Herrig went missing on Sharp Mountain, not in the Tamaqua area, a few miles from there, but still the same mountain. Zachary Vidal, he went missing in the Pottsville area, but they believe that he could be also on Sharp Mountain. Seth Muskett went missing right near the same area that Jesse, where this mountain was, but it wasn't exactly, but it was close. I mean, so that, and Jay Hahn, him and that Corey Samuels, they went missing, and Jay was found on Sharp Mountain, and this was, again, it was not right in Tamaqua, but it was down the highway a bit, and he was found murdered, and Corey Samuels, same mountain, but in the total opposite direction.
Okay. And and maybe this shouldn't be any surprise. I mean, this is a mountainous part of Pennsylvania. A lot of mountains around there. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, not flat where I grew up in western Pennsylvania, but it's certainly not as mountainous as the middle of Pennsylvania. By the time you get to western Pennsylvania, things are starting to flatten out. And of course, when you get to Ohio, it's really flat, and as is most of the Midwest. Okay, so really not sure if we can make any connections regarding any of these people. You living in the area, were you aware of all these men being missing? I mean, you knew Jay Hahn, but just living in the area, were you aware of all of these?
No, I vaguely remember James Herrig, hearing about him because he was from the Tamaqua area. I don't remember about Seth, even though that happened like a year before Jesse, but I don't remember that. But once Jesse went missing, that's when I found out about more about James's case. I learned about John Lango's case, and then Zachary went missing just last year.
He did.
On October 22nd.
Right, he did.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to ask you. Given this Sharp Mountain area, how familiar was Jesse with it? Being that you knew him so well, you have 2 children with him, knew him for a long time. When would you say was the last time, if we are to believe that he was telling the truth or was seeing reality as it was, however you want to put it, that he was really up on that high school mountain that night? When would you say would have been the last time that he was on that mountain, if ever?
Prior to this?
Yep.
I would have to say probably sometime that summer we probably were up there doing what we always did. We even took our kids up the woods and had like a campfire and kind of like cook hot dogs, that kind of thing. We would take the kids up there and hike. So I'm not exactly sure when the last time, but I'm sure that we had been up there that summer before he went missing.
All right, so this was not a strange place to him. He had been up there. Once again, if we are to believe that I'm not sure we have to believe the coyotes and everything, but if he was up on this mountain, what you call the high school mountain, he had been there before.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Rachel, how has this affected you? Of course, you had a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old when this happened, and now you have I guess, roughly a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old. How's this affected you over the last 8 years?
Well, it's changed everything. I mean, this hasn't changed my entire life and everything in it. I mean, my kids, they don't have their father, and they've been robbed of a father who was there for them and loves them. So dealing with that and keeping their, I don't know exactly how to put it, but, they've had rough times, and, helping them through that, and that was very rough also. And, I mean, as for me, I've known Jesse a long time. I mean, we were together almost 8 years, and now he's missing longer than we've even been together.
Right.
And before our relationship, like I said, we were good friends, and we helped each other through stuff. We got our first place together, and, so in a sense, we grew up together. We became parents together. We had a life together. We had plans together. We had plans for the future. We were going to move from this area. We both wanted to go to college. Like I said before, we wanted the most we was that we aimed for is that we wanted the absolute best for our kids. And we did everything together. And then, one day without warning, he just vanishes without a trace. And it's hard to describe that feeling. I mean, like, he was the love of my life, and now he's gone, and there's no answers to what happened. So losing him and looking for him and all that was hard enough, and then trying to go on or live without him, it was like a whole nother hardship. And it's like, and that's really hard to describe. I mean, he was missing, he's physically lost, and I guess, like, you could say I was lost mentally in every other sense, and I still am. It's hard to go on, but I try to stay strong for my children because they need me, and, I still want to fight for this, for Jesse. He deserves justice, and he deserves peace.
When you talk to your own family, your parents, of course, your brother was there with you that night. I mean, does Jesse's name come up a lot? Do you just still discuss what could have happened back at that time? How often now does he come up in conversations with your family?
All the time, because it's something that's always on my mind, and my family is really open to talking to me about it. And we had recently just went, me and my brother and my sister, we went up and searched the area where the book bag was supposedly found. So we do that kind of thing together. My family is always supportive of helping me with this, and they do stuff on their own also. And we discuss it often, but we also talk about, things that happen, like the good times and stuff like that, too.
Sure. Looking back, let me ask you this. Being that this call, and like I said, if we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. But my impression is going to be that most people who listen to this, they very well may be that believe that he was up on some mountain or that foul play occurred, but I don't really think they're going to believe that coyotes were involved in this. And we know coyotes exist in Pennsylvania, so that's not that crazy. But sometimes when people manifest things, if they are hallucinating on drugs, sometimes they do start talking about things that maybe are on their mind. Was there any reason you can think of that coyotes would have been on Jesse's mind at this time? Did he ever talk about coyotes? Did you ever see coyotes when you'd go out up to that mountain or anywhere, anything like that?
No, I actually tried to think about that too. I thought maybe, what if he said coyotes, but he was trying to tell me something different, he meant something different, and he thought I'd understand that. I've thought of every aspect you could think of, did he mean this or, whatever. but I do believe that he thought that coyotes were after him. Now, I've said this before to other people that when he did call, it was completely silent in the background. And coyotes are pretty loud, so I didn't hear any animals or anything like that. What was the other question?
I'm just wondering, if you ever talked about coyotes. Did you ever see coyotes? Would there have been any reason that coyotes would have been on his mind? Did he ever have an encounter with coyotes or anything?
No, I've never seen coyotes. I've seen lots of animals in these woods, bears, all kinds of stuff. I actually only seen a coyote one time, and it wasn't even on the mountain. It was on that valley road. I was coming back from work, and it was running across the road, and I actually thought it was like a German Shepherd, and it was a coyote, and it was like really lightly colored. And that's the only time I've seen that. I've actually seen like a lot of huge bears and everything, but I've never seen coyotes. And like you said, they are around here, but I've never seen them personally, no.
Okay. Let me also ask you this, once again, getting to that call. He did say bring guns. That's what he said.
He did. That was the first thing he said.
Okay, now I have to ask, once again, I realize this is usually a very private conversation, but do you own guns that you could have brought?
Not at that time, I didn't. The only gun that was at our house was a .22 that his grandfather had given him, and it was something of Jesse's from when he was a kid, and his grandfather gave it to him as a gift, and it was in the gun safe. But otherwise, no, I didn't even ever shoot a gun until after Jesse went missing, and I didn't have any guns of my own at that time.
All right, so he's telling you to bring guns, but if he was in his right mind, he would know that you've never shot a gun before, and the only gun that's even familiar to you is in a gun safe, and it's just one gun. It's not like you have 10 guns.
Right.
Right, and on top of that, he's telling you to bring guns, but it seems he didn't call anybody else.
Right.
So how are you?
I don't understand it, because he knew that I didn't have any. He knew that I didn't have access to them or anything like that. So.
Right. So he's calling you. How are you supposed to bring guns, plural, when he should know that there's only one gun that you would even know how to find it, you even have access to one.
Right.
And it's not like he said, get your brother, get your family, call the cops, or, it wasn't that. He just said, bring guns, and I'm in a tree, and there are 10 or 11 coyotes after me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's another part of the comment that, dare I say, and, I've been more vocal, I own more than one gun. So if somebody calls me and says, hey, Ed, I'm in trouble, I'm out in the woods, bring guns, I would be capable of bringing guns, plural. But you, given what you're saying here, you would not be able to bring guns. And he would probably know that. Okay. And on top of the fact, I can understand why he might call you. Of course, he cares about you. You trust him. He trusts you. But dare I say, if he's surrounded by coyotes, why aren't you calling 911 or something?
Yeah, that's been brought up, and that's a good question. I'm not sure why he didn't call 911 or the police or anything like that. Somebody once in a comment brought up something I never thought about before, because like I said, I could never make sense of the gun thing. They had said maybe he had said that out loud because he was trying to let somebody else hear that, like somebody's coming and they have guns, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But that's the only thing that I ever heard that even made a little bit of sense. But like I said, at the same time, he thought coyotes were there, so that doesn't add up either. So the whole phone call is really.
Mm-hmm. Yep, doesn't make a lot of sense. The problem is we do have stories of him trying to get drugs and everything else, but then it comes back to when did this start? Because you never got the impression that he was doing them, and of course. A lot of things of his were still at your place and in the last 8 years. once you started kind of cleaning things up and maybe it looked like Jesse wasn't going to be coming back anytime too soon, did you ever find anything that led you to believe that that Jesse was different than the man you knew?
No, I actually searched the entire house because I was thinking, I kept thinking he had to have another phone. He had to have another phone. That this doesn't make sense. And I never found another phone. He had a lot of paperwork and stuff in his safe and everything. I went through all that. There was never anything I could find anywhere. Just his normal stuff. I never found anything that, drug paraphernalia or hidden stacks of money or anything that you would think if he was doing something like that.
Okay. Rachel, do you have a Facebook page, website, anything like that, TikTok account, Instagram, anything like that set up for Jesse's disappearance? If so, why don't you give them to the audience right now?
I do have a Facebook and a website for him, and I do have a TikTok. Facebook is Finding Jesse Farber. The TikTok is just under my name. It's at RCC Carroll. There's a lot of videos on there where it's flyer and different pictures, but I also have live videos because I think they're important for people to see. Okay,
Rachel, any final words before we complete this interview?
I just want to thank you, Ed, for, making the time to do this for Jesse's case. And as for anybody listening, if anybody ever has any information, even something small, please come forward because it could change his case completely. And I'm also grateful for everyone out there who has been helping me through this. And again, thank you, Ed. I really appreciate the help that you're giving me, Jesse, in his case.
You're very welcome, Rachel. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And that was my August 26th, 2023 interview with Rachel Carroll, girlfriend of Jesse Farber. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. Yep, I've made a map to make sure anyone who is interested can see what he or she can make of Jesse's movements that day and night of August 11th, 2015. You can find the analysis video on Unfound's YouTube channel. Rachel has created a website for Jesse's disappearance. The problem is that the address for it is a combination of letters and numbers that would be too confusing to recite here. So please find the link on Unfound's page on Facebook and at Unfound's website, theunfoundpodcast.com. After I did the interview with Rachel, she posted a video on TikTok in which she definitively states that the bag found in the tree during one of the searches on Sharp Mountain is not Jesse's, despite what others who knew Jesse thought. I've posted a link to Rachel's TikTok page on Unfound's website, once again, theunfoundpodcast.com, if you would like to view the video for yourself. So, what to think about all of this? Well, there was certainly something going on with money before Jesse disappeared. I realized that given how Jesse acted the night he went missing, that the first idea will be that he had gotten mixed up in drugs, and you heard Rachel mention that possibility. The problem is, would his younger brother really cover for Jesse like that? And seriously, the best story that the two could concoct was that Jesse owed his brother money for beer and cigarettes from 10 years ago. Hey, dare I say we've all covered for a sibling at one time or another. But this tale is about the worst cover story I've ever heard. In fact, it covered nothing and only highlighted something wrong was going on. Yet, I'm not sure that had anything to do with Jesse's disappearance. As for the call, we must consider that Jesse could have called anyone that night, but he called Rachel. This tells me that there was at least a part of Jesse that understood reality. In other words, that he called her and didn't call his job or his dentist or his barber, tells me in his mind, Jesse thought he was in trouble and called a person he trusted to help him. That shows clarity. The problem is, how do we combine that with the coyotes and Gunn's statements? And was he really on Sharp Mountain? How would it be possible for Jesse to pick Rachel's number out of his phone's directory, but at the same time really think coyotes were after him? How would it be possible for Jesse to pick a person who cared deeply about him to call, but then turn around and tell her to bring guns when Jesse would know that Rachel didn't have any? And if Jesse expected Rachel to follow through with his instructions in going to the mountain to save him, why didn't he answer his phone when she called back several times? Hard to understand. I think if we had answers to these topics, then we would be much closer to solving Jesse's disappearance. Or maybe those are my famous last words. If you'd like to hear and read my further in-depth analysis of Jesse Farber's disappearance, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and sign up to partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.